guys, Morena. Welcome to the podcast. I am so excited to have a special guest on the podcast today. We have Lilz, aka Crossthick, in the house. Thank you so much for being here, sis.
Thank you for having me. Good
Yay.
morning. Good morning.
Morning. So Lilz is an influencer. She's a mum, a LSKD sponsored athlete, a strong fucking baddie.
Oh, please,
And
that's too much.
and I'm so excited to have you on the podcast, sis. So thank you so much for being here. Just a little backstory as well of how I met you, because I actually met you through your sister. She used to do my nails, and this is when I had So Extra sunglasses. So
Yeah.
I was talking to her about the business, and I was like, oh, I need, some influencers to kind of help me, and I want Polynesian influencers. And she was like, oh, I can ask my sister. And I was like, who's your sister? And then she showed me your page, and I was like, oh my goodness. And then obviously I reached out to you, and thank you so much for doing that, by the way, sis, like helping put me on and, showing the
Oh,
sunnies to everyone.
of
And
course. I think she did mention you to me. She was like, "Oh, this girl, she does like sunglasses, da da da." I mentioned you, and I'm like, "Oh, send her my way.
yeah.
Let's go."
And your energy is just, it's crazy. So as soon as I saw you and sent you the sunglasses, I was just like, damn, like, you're freaking incredible in what you do. So yeah, I'd love for you to share with the people, share with the audience, introduce yourself. Who are you, sis?
I'm Lilz. It's funny how people ask me, "Who are you?" Honestly, I'm just I would just say that I'm just this really confident, you know, outgoing, like real out there individual. And that's basically who I am. I will never identify myself as someone who just lifts heavy. I think I used to say that. I used to be
Mm,
like, oh, I just lift. But now I'm just like, no, I'm just a strong woman who's just real
yes.
confident and real out there, and that's just who I am. I'm real, I'm raw. I don't really need to sugarcoat anything, and I'm just that
Mhm.
person. I'm that person where everyone's like, oh my god, yep, she's that girl that walks in the room.
I love it. I love that, sis. I talked a little bit about like how you're influencing. So how did that journey start?
Oh my gosh, how funny. um, it honestly wasn't supposed to be anything to like, anything that had to do with being an influencer. I kind of just started CrossFit at a gym, and I realized that I was pretty strong, number one. And number two, I looked really different from everyone, but I could do pretty much everything that everyone else was doing. So I thought to me that was pretty cool. So I remember I just went on Instagram. I think I was like at the gym for maybe like 3 months when I realized, oh, okay, I think I'm pretty good at this. So
Mm.
I went on my Instagram, changed my username to Crossthick, and then just went from there. And then I just started posting like training videos of me. And I only did that because I thought it was like, oh, cool. But then I didn't realize everyone else was like, damn, all right.
Mm.
So yeah, I think that's just it kind of just built up over time. Like it wasn't like because I think back then everyone wasn't really, in this because I feel like it's like trending now, It's like a
Yeah.
big trend on CrossFit and like training and lifting heavy. I think back then it wasn't a big thing. But I was always just posting it, whatever. But it kind of just built up over time.
Yeah, nice. And I love how you talk about you realize like, oh, I'm good at this. Like go you, but then also like, oh, I don't look like everybody else. So I would love to talk a little bit more like that, because sometimes in these spaces we do have that you want to look like everyone, you want to fit in, you want to. So for you to be like, oh, I don't look like everyone, cool. I'm gonna jump online and show everyone what I got. How did that go? And were there any speed bumps along the way, or yeah, what was kind of going through your mind?
I think it was when I first started. So when I first started, I remember I was lifting really light. compared to the other women. I would say that I was only comparing myself to the women because damn, they were strong. They were a lot smaller than me, but they were lifting a lot heavier than me. And I would
Mm,
stand there and I would be like, oh wow. Like it's like it wasn't a jealousy thing. It was literally just really inspiring to me. But
yeah,
it was more so of me being like, wait, mentally I knew I was strong, you
yeah.
know? Physically, I didn't know I was that strong, but mentally, I was like, no, I think I am a lot stronger than that. So, just seeing them and looking at me, I was like, really? You're really lifting this light, and these girls are tiny, like, tinier than me, and they're lifting so much more. It's like, imagine if I can just keep, keep coming here and I'll eventually be lifting a lot more. And then that's how I kind of knew. That's when I knew, like, okay, all right, everyone's a bit smaller than me, but they're muscly. So then I think about 6 months later, I decided to do a comp with this girl. She just hit me up. She's like, "Oh, let's compete together." And she was like this pillow. She was like a tank. She was muscly, and I was like, "Damn." I was like, she's asking me to partner up with her. But in my head, it was like, wait, girl, she's asking you for a reason. She must think you're really
Mm,
good, you know? So then I went to that comp that day. It was like the scariest thing of my life. And I saw all my competitors, and that's when I saw, okay, I'm very different.
yeah.
I didn't have a six pack like all these other girls. They had these massive traps. They were, very muscular, and yes, that day I was like, okay, um, I do not look like that. But I know deep down it was like, okay, let me work.
Mm.
Let me see that I can put the hard work into, but I don't have to look like that. And we came first on that comp.
Oh,
And I
wow.
think that was a big wake up call for me. It was like, oh, okay. Well, it was like kind of like I proved myself wrong, where it was like
Mm,
you could do the hard work, you did it. So now it's like, from that, I think from that point, I kind of didn't care like afterwards.
nice.
So obviously, I kept training. I was eating well, and then that's when my body started changing, and then I started getting all the hateful comments and stuff. Like it's like every time you go through a season with your body, you get like it doesn't matter from who, from where, you'll always get this kind of hate where it's like, oh, like people were starting to call me a man, you know? Like that's what I mean. Like nowadays it's trending for a girl to be muscly. Back then it was like, oh hey man. But like as a joke, like people would say as a joke, and I
Mm,
can just I can just, remember, like it was just like, oh, like, it would get to me, but I kind of just had to kind of just keep the ball rolling because it was
yeah,
like, no, you're not burning my light.
good.
So yeah, that's how everything. Wow, am I talking a lot? Because I feel like
No, it's good. I love it, sis. I love a point you made there. You said that you kind of proved yourself wrong, right? Because we do, our mind makes up these kind of, they have these thoughts and then they turn into beliefs and we roll with that. And then
oh
it's not till you do something and it's like, oh shit, I won this competition, and you prove yourself wrong, that it's like, oh, I can't tell myself that I'm not good at this because I just won a competition. So I
yeah.
love that you pointed that out. You talked about confidence as well, and that you are this confident person. You're this, your energy, when you walk into a room, it's like people know that Lilz is in the building. So have you always been that way? Have you always been confident? What's your journey been like there?
Yes, I think I have. I think when I think about it from early childhood, yes, I would say that I kind of grew up around an environment where I wasn't around confident women. I would say that. I would say confident women. So it just began from there. It's like, like I grew up around cousins and sisters where, they would all look at themselves, and it was nothing ever nice. Like, especially to each other. It was like, oh my
Mm,
gosh, like calling each other a heifer, and like, but in a joking way. You know how us
mm,
islanders are. It's a
yeah.
joking, it's always a joke. you know, or sometimes it's shade.
Yeah.
Like, we don't know the difference between the two.
Yeah.
So, we kind of just sit there and we just let it go, like, just let it, oh yeah, like a ha ha ha.
Mm.
But it's kind of not. And I remember just kind of growing up around it. It was like, mm, I don't want to be like that. I don't want to follow on that path,
Mm.
you know? So I remember I kind of just stuck with my brother, growing up, and I stuck with my boy cousins because in my head it was like, man, why are women like this? Why are girls like this? I don't want to be like that,
Mm.
you know? So somehow I kind of just kept, as I was growing up, I was reaching puberty and all of that. I was kind of just going my own way,
Mm.
Um, and I think that's all it was. I just didn't want to be like that. I didn't want to talk down on myself. I didn't want to ever tell myself that I wasn't beautiful, or I didn't look nice that day.
Mm.
So I remember every weekend it would start for church. Church would come up, and I remember like I'll put on like I'll dress up nicely, and
Mm.
obviously, like I said, still hateful things from a lot of people. They're just like, oh, that's too tight, that's too short, da da da. But deep down, I was like, well, I told myself I didn't want to be like this, so I'm going this way, and I love it.
Mm.
I would rather be happy than feel like shit, honestly.
Mm.
So yeah.
Awesome. How old would you say you were when you realized, like, hey, all these women are talking nonsense, they're talking down on themselves, and I don't want to be like that?
13 would be like my
13.
peak age where I realized everything.
Wow. That's
Yes.
incredible. That's such a good like your mindset so strong in that moment to be like, no, I don't want that, and I choose not to believe those things.
Yeah.
What do you think, because you mentioned it was the women around you, what do you think kind of made them that way? Why do you think women are like that when they look at themselves and call themselves names, or they see someone else looking amazing and going to church in theirs and being like, that's too short, that's too this, that's too that? What do you think it is?
Honestly, I think like I said, because I was 13, everyone was a lot older than me. So that's kind of how, you know, I was so young and I kind of developed that mentality already. Everybody was like over 20. So because these were like grown ass women already, it was just
Mm,
like, unfortunately, it was their surroundings growing up, and they kind of
mm,
just, you know, they all kind of followed along. It was just a generation of kind of like just
yeah.
all the cycles consistently happening, and unfortunately, even my sister went through it. You know,
Mm,
we were so close in age, and she kind of saw what my cousins and what they were all doing, and like they were clubbing at like what 14, whatever. She wanted to go that route as well. For me, it was like, nah, I don't want to do that.
mm,
So I think it's just your environment,
yeah.
and you know and it's a choice at the end of the day.
Mm,
You choose what you want to be, and I chose not to kind of go down that road. Obviously
yeah.
it's exciting being that young, and you're looking up to these older girls, putting makeup on, getting ready. But yeah, it's definitely has to be your surroundings and environment growing up in. And you think because you're young and you look at older women, you think like, wow, they have it all together. It's not until you grow up and you're like, damn, no. Like,
Mm.
wow, you really think everyone's got it together? Nah.
For somebody who's listening to this podcast episode right now and they're like, oh, I'm around women who are talking badly about themselves, and I know that I don't want to be in that space, and I want to be confident, and I want to be bubbly, and I want to express myself fully, and I know they're going to talk shit about me, but I really don't want to be like them. I want to do something different. What would your message be to them if you could tell them something?
Don't let it absorb you, like don't absorb that information. You can be around it. I was around, my family all the time growing up, but I just chose not to kind of take it in.
Mm,
it will just be there, you know? Unfortunately, sometimes you do have to have thick skin, you know? Like when things like that happen, you can't control your surroundings, you know? But in saying that, I constantly went and did my own thing. You know, I found the gym, I found training, I found that, you know, instead of asking them to teach me makeup, I went to YouTube. You know, I would watch
mm,
YouTube tutorials, like all the things I wanted to know, I would go do it on my own and find it for myself. You know, I think, you know, you don't have to surround yourself around other people. You can kind of just do everything, you know, the way you want. And then eventually people just start coming in who think the same as you. You know, you
mm.
attract what you give.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. I love that. Don't absorb it. Like you can be there, but you don't have to take in what they're saying.
you don't.
Love that, sis.
You really
Awesome.
don't.
Yeah. So you are a LSKD sponsored athlete. That's freaking incredible, sis.
Crazy.
Speak more about that. How did you become a sponsored athlete? How did that whole thing come
Oh,
about?
it was honestly, oh, it was when my partner and I we moved to far north Queensland. And obviously, COVID and stuff happened. I gained a lot of weight. You know, I was just not in a good mindset. And, you know, we were there. I don't have family in Queensland. So it was just like, okay, well, looks like we're just starting from scratch, you know?
Mm,
And then I was looking for a gym, found one. Um, and the owner, she is a sponsored LSKD athlete.
mm,
So she had the guys from LSKD. Um, where are they based? They're based in Brisbane. So they flew to Cairns to film her. And I think I was at the gym for like, that was like my first month, but I never did the classes. I would just go in at like the time frame where I can just do my own thing without
mm.
bothering anyone. So I would go in and I remember they were going to film her, but they could see me in the background. Anyway, I'm just doing my own thing. I have my earphones in, have no idea who they are. I don't know this gym at all. You know,
Mm,
I don't know anything. I didn't even know who else Katie was.
mm.
Let's just start there. So I
Mm.
was just lifting, you know, I think I was just clean and jerking like 100 kilos. And then these two guys just come up to me and they're like, hey, is that a PB? Which means personal best.
Yeah.
So they were just like, oh, is that a PB? And I'm like, oh, no, no, no. It's just, you know, I'm just trying to get some numbers back in. And they're like, so that's not a PB. And I'm like, no. And then they were just like, okay, so we're from LSKD headquarters. We would love to see you in some gears one day. And I'm like, yeah, that'd be cool. And then they got my Instagram from there. This was around Feb, right?
Mm,
I didn't think of anything because it was kind of just like, you know, when people say things, you know, growing up Islander,
mm,
you know, your mom and dad tell you they're going to take you, they're here, the next day they don't. So it was kind of
mm.
like that for me. It was just like, yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, they didn't hit me up until July.
Oh.
Yeah, so it was pretty, I was like, but that's the thing. Like they told me and it was just like, oh, yeah, cool. But until July, they hit me up and yeah, it just basically everything started from that
Mm,
moment. Like it just went crazy and they flew back down to film me and that's when everything popped off. Like I
mm,
think their brand, they never really kind of showcased women like me, you know?
mhm,
So when they put me up, they had so much like, wow, this is what we want to see. We want to see
mhm,
real people. We want to see, you know, women that look like her, you know,
mhm.
because obviously, you know, these brands are trending now where they're putting plus size.
Yeah.
But, you know, sometimes you don't think it's genuine. But I think Alice KD so far has been, you know, pretty much the best company I've kind of worked with.
Good. That's awesome.
Like it was a
That's amazing.
genuine approach, you know? It wasn't like, oh, okay, she's, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And so when it comes to social media, I don't know about you, but there are sometimes where I get hate for what I look like, that I'm this plus size woman, I'm this, thriving. I'm out there in these spaces being my loud, proud, so extra self, right? What
Mhm.
would you, or firstly, do you get that kind of hate? And your face is saying, yeah, you do.
Oh, see, it's so it's so draining,
Yeah.
thinking about it because the amount of hate I get,
Mm,
it's just why? Why do
yeah.
you guys have to hate on someone who's just happy? You know,
Yeah.
like sometimes I'm just like, it's not even about the confidence. It's about just being purely happy with where I'm at. I
Yeah.
think just a couple weeks ago, I made a video and then LSKD shared it. There was like 500 hateful comments. And I remember, because, obviously, you know, things don't get to you and then they get to you. This got to me. Like, I won't
Yep.
lie. It
Mm.
got to me. Like, it was kind of like, oh, now that I have a baby and it's
Mm,
like, just thinking of me like being a mom and then it's like reading all these comments and it's just like, damn, like, whoa, that was really sad. And I
mhm,
think what was more upsetting for me is I've never ever spoken to my partner about the hate I get. Your partner loves you. They only
mhm,
see the good side, the great things. They think you are like the best person ever. So I think Nick didn't understand, you know, that side of, social media, especially with
mm,
me. So I remember I casually kind of just said it. And I was like to him, oh my gosh, there's so much hate.
mm,
And he was just like, what do you mean? Anyway, he goes and sees all the comments, and it was just like, okay, I don't know whether I should kind of like let him understand now but I
mm,
think that was where I went wrong because it was like, I just wanted him to see the good, because to me it
mm,
was a bit embarrassing seeing all those comments. It was
mm.
like, really? Like, I just gave birth.
Yeah.
But then it was kind of like I had to kind of just cry about it and I had to be human about it and be like,
Mhm,
look, let me feel how I'm feeling right now, cry about it. And then the next day I literally showed up for myself. I went to training and then I felt like I was on top of the world again. So I think the
mhm,
hardest thing about getting a lot of hate is that don't let it consume you. You can let yourself feel however you're feeling, but the
mhm,
next day, keep doing you. You need to keep
mhm,
showing up for yourself because the minute you don't show up for yourself, then you kind of just let it really
mm.
you let it absorb you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's hard. It's really hard. It's really hard to show up for yourself the next day.
Mhm,
Like me just going to the gym, it was like, ugh, why am I here? Like, what do I want? What am I even doing here? But then
mhm.
as soon as it's done, it's like, you know what? I did that. I can't believe
Yeah.
I did that. And I can't believe I was so sad about those damn comments. Fuck yous.
Yeah.
You know? It was like, you guys are so damn sad with your lives. You
Mhm,
have to pick on me because I'm dancing.
mm,
Like, it was funny because all the other posts that they post me, it's either of me training. So it's never like, the hateful comments are not that bad. But this video was just me dancing. And that's where I got the most hate was me
mm,
dancing and being happy. So, it's pretty funny. It's just like, wow, you guys really hate
mhm.
just being that happy.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, it's more a reflection of them than anything about you. And I love the realness in that you said, feel it, cry it out, but don't let it get you down. Go the next day, show up for yourself. Don't let them win. Still be you. So
Exactly.
you mentioned you're a mum now and people hating you like, damn, I just gave birth. And I think I actually saw a post that you did and you were like, everyone celebrates you when you're pregnant. They're like, yeah, yeah, like go you sis. And then as soon as you give birth and you're showing up, they're like, what the hell? Like, you've got to bounce back. Why are you looking that way? There's that body shaming and stuff like that. I'd love for you to speak a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think it's crazy because you're carrying life, you know? So, like, when you're carrying life, it's like, okay, everyone needs to kind of like nurture you and, be around you and make sure you're okay. You're glowing, you look great, da da da. Da. And then once that life is physically here, it's like, oh, okay, well, what are you doing to make sure he's okay when how about the same energy from when he was inside of me, nurturing me,
Mm,
making sure I'm okay. But then it's like as soon as he's out and I need to try and make myself good and make myself okay at the end of the day, it's like it's a big problem for people. It's a big problem for people to see a mom trying to better herself, to make sure she's okay. Like,
mm,
I think that's kind of, oh, it's just so like sometimes I'll just sit there and I don't understand how people think because it's like
mm,
it's not an easy job,
yeah,
bringing life. And especially like, no matter what the plan was, if it was planned or unplanned, it's never an easy job once you have a child,
mhm,
regardless of what you've been through. It's just like at the end of the day, it's us that our cups, like we have to run on an empty cup. That's the thing,
mhm,
so us going to the gym and trying to like make sure we're emotionally and physically well, we're doing it from an empty cup a majority of the time. So obviously when people are commenting on our bodies and doing all that, it's like
mm,
it's so unnecessary. So
mhm,
when obviously I have to kind of go through all of that, it's just like, all right, let's just like
yeah,
let's just get this out of the way. Okay, yep, yep. All right, cool. Worst mom of the year,
mm,
ugliest mom of
mm,
the year, baddest mom of the year. Like it's just
mm,
like, damn, really? So,
mm,
it's pretty crazy, you
mm,
know? Like it's pretty crazy how harsh people can be, especially on a mother and even a first time mom, like
yeah,
damn, first time moms, oh man, I didn't realize how hard this was gonna be. You
mm,
I
yeah,
feel like I've had a lot of experience with kids, especially being at a young age. But once you have a kid of your own, it's like, okay, like right, okay, damn.
yeah.
Yeah, I was like, oh, okay,
Mm.
it wasn't like that, huh?
You didn't have the best pregnancy and birth experience and stuff like that. So I'd love for you to talk about kind of your experience with it and what were some of the things that you were like, "Oh, I didn't realize this happens." Like nobody talks about this part of pregnancy or this part of birth.
Yeah, so because we were living in Queensland, I have been on contraception for about 2 years, which was an IUD.
Mm,
So it's just a 98.9%, chance of not being pregnant.
mm,
I think that's just, wasn't the plan in our books was not to have kids. We just wanted to kind of like, I think for me, it was just all about training.
yeah.
Honestly, like training is like everyone who knows me knows that training is like number one thing in my life. Unfortunately, it's something I'm trying to unlearn. Anyway,
Mm,
so one day I think I was just having cramps and I was just telling Nick, I'm like, I'm getting really weird stomach pains that I never usually get. And minding you, I hate going to the doctors. So when I told him I'm going to go to the doctors, he was just like, wow, must be that bad, huh? And I'm like,
mm,
yeah, I think so, but I'll just go after work. I'll see you at home later. Wasn't a big deal. I go to the doctor's. He, obviously gets my urine in a cup. He thinks I have an infection.
mm.
Anyway, everything came back fine, and he's like, "Oh, maybe we should do a pregnancy test." And I kind of just sat there and laughed. I was like, "Okay." I'm like, "It's gonna come negative, but yeah, whatever. If you need to do it, do it." Anyway, all I remember was him standing there for a good 5 minutes just waiting, and I'm just sitting there like, "How no?" I was like, "How no?" And he was just waiting, waiting, and honestly, it's like I already
Mhm.
subconsciously knew. My stomach drops, and I'm
Mm.
just like, "Oh, damn." And he's like, "Well, it's positive." And I'm like, "What's positive?" And he's like, "Your pregnancy, you're pregnant." And I'm like, "No, I'm not." He's like, "Yeah, you are." And I'm like, "But it can't be. I have the IUD." And
Mm.
well, and then I just kind of started bawling myself. I just like crying, da da da. I get in the car, I drive straight to the chemist, and I go grab a pregnancy test because I'm just in denial at that point. It's
Mm.
like, nah, he's wrong. I have this IUD. The doctors said that this is effective. Like, I can't be pregnant because
Mm.
I think for all that time, doctors were always telling me like, I have PCOS and
Yep.
it'll be hard for me to get pregnant. And
Yep.
so me receiving that news, it was like, oh, I didn't even know I could.
Yeah.
So anyway, fast forward, because I had the IUD, I had to go to the emergency, had to get it taken out. They told me the risks and stuff. Um, and my partner was working in the mines. So
Oh,
as soon as we found out, like 4 days later, he had to fly back to Papua New Guinea. So so everything, like, I was still trying to process everything. I think I kind of just accepted the fact that, okay, I'm pregnant.
mm.
We're pregnant. Obviously, we're keeping our baby. There's like, this is just, it's a gift from God, okay?
Yeah. Yeah.
So then he left and I went to work the next morning. It was around 5 a.m. and I just remember I felt like I was peeing myself.
Mm.
I touched my leggings and it's all blood. So it was just like, what is happening? I rushed to the hospital and they're basically just saying, look, we don't know why you're bleeding. You probably miscarried. And I'm just sitting there like, I think
Mm.
I've miscarried too because it was just too much blood and everything was just really just not processing. I can't even contact Nick. So I'm like
Mm.
messaging his boss, like, hello, sorry. I'm so sorry I'm messaging you, but please tell my partner I'm in the hospital. And everything was just kind of mentally breaking down for me at that point. So I was just accepting the fact that I miscarried, like all of that. I go down, they take me in, and they say that the fetus is still there. By this point, I'm only 4 weeks pregnant, four
Mm.
or 5 weeks. So I'm very, very early. And they were just telling me, look, we don't know why you're bleeding. We don't know why you're going to keep bleeding because I just couldn't stop bleeding.
Mm.
And they had to treat it as if I was going to miscarry.
Mm.
Just it was just a matter of time. So it was like, okay. So I basically bled for my whole trimester, the whole 3 months. And the doctors were just telling me I just had to wait to see what happens. But for me, it was just like every day was just, oh, like I
Mm.
think I just cried all the time because it was like, I don't want to, like, if I'm going to miscarry, then what's the point? I don't want
Mm.
to just keep waiting and being hopeful and, just having that. So then that's when all the other nonsense came in with the doctors saying, you need to be on this medication. So by that time, we were going to travel to the US. They told me I couldn't travel. I was going to be blood clotting. And I just sat there and I'm like, I'm like, no, 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 no. No. Because apparently my BMI is high at that
Mm.
point too. So when they kind of mentioned that, it was like, this is a thing I don't like with doctors that, they talk about our
Talk about
BMI,
it.
but like, in fact, in reality, I can probably outrun you, outlift you, or do all this stuff. They don't realize how active I am.
Yeah.
I may look like I'm a lot bigger for you, but you guys don't know my everyday life. I'm a pretty
Mhm.
active person.
Yeah.
So I chose to just go overseas. I chose to kind of just leave it in God's hands and, just prayed every night on my pregnancy. And it was just like, okay. So I just remember it was a bit dreadful because every day it was kind of like a miracle that was happening, you know?
Mhm.
So yeah, they like it was no answers. It was just a waiting game the whole time. And then yeah, my whole pregnancy was basically just waiting. So that's why it was a bit traumatizing because the
Mm.
doctors always told me that what I could do, what I couldn't do, and it was just like, you don't tell me what I can't do." I
Mm.
think at the end of the day, we know our own bodies, you know, and I knew
Mhm.
mine very well. So I didn't take any medications. I kind of just went with it. And then fast forward to my birth. Oh, my birth was just a horror story, honestly. It was like I was in a horror movie. Like
Mm.
they wanted to induce me. I
Yeah.
said no. My waters broke naturally. Everything happened naturally. And I think it was so like, it was just a kind of a slap in the doctor's face, because they
Mm.
just told me this whole time, like, I'm so high risk, da 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 da, like, everything that could go wrong, but everything was going perfectly fine. My waters broke, went into the hospital. I was being really calm. I just remember I knew that I was just like, look, you're just going to stay calm, cool and collected. Once I have contractions, just kind of just be in it. And I was fine. Contractions were coming. I was being amazing. Like, look, the doctors would just look at my contractions and they're like, wow, usually women would be screaming by now, but you're okay. And I'm like, I'm fine. I'm just ready. Just ready. I'm so sick of you guys. I just want to have my baby. I can't believe we've made it this far.
Yeah.
Anywho, I was in labor for about
Mm.
23 hours, and the doctors, that's when the doctors started hassling us.
Mm.
They were just like, look, you need to have your baby now. He's in distress, his heart rate's dropping. And I was just, so Nick was advocating for me, and
Mm.
he knew what I wanted. So I just remember I was just staying cool, calm, and collected. It was like, you guys are not going to stress me out.
Mm.
And he was just like, she's fine. The baby's okay. If she feels fine, we're gonna keep going. We're gonna keep riding this wave. And they're
Mm.
just like, but why? But why? We need to cut her open. The baby needs to come out now. And he's like, no, she's okay. So then the doctors would leave, another three doctors would come. Why do you guys not want to get C-section? Like they just kept going, and I'm just sitting there like, just
Mm.
stop. Oh my gosh. And Nick was just like, look, she's fine. We're just gonna kindly decline again
Mm.
and again, and we're gonna keep declining. So we
Mm.
don't want to go through that. She's fine. They leave, another like two doctors come in, and this was the final one. And they were just like, look, if this baby doesn't come within 2 hours, he's gonna die. And just hearing that while I'm
Mm.
trying to be, cool, calm, and collected, it's like tears just came running. Like I was just like, oh, they got me.
Mm.
You can't just stand there and tell me my baby's gonna die. And I'm just gonna be the worst mother and just sit there and be like, no, you know?
Mm.
So I looked at Nick and I was like, I can't. I'm
Mm.
sorry, we can't keep this. Like, we just say yes. So they
Mm.
can just get out of our faces.
Yeah.
And then but Nick being Nick, he's like, no, it's okay. He's like, no, we don't want it. And the doctors are just like, he's gonna have a disability, they were just giving you every extreme card out
Yeah.
there. So
Yeah.
I was just like, look, we're gonna do it. I can't. By this time it was about 6 p.m. They didn't He didn't come out until 9 o'clock, and he was perfectly healthy.
Mm.
So I did end up getting a cesarean. They pushed me down. They tried to give me an epidural to numb me. Nothing was working. They laid me down, and I remember they cut me, and I felt it. Like everything was just going wrong. And they were like, we're so sorry. We're going to have to put you to sleep. So Nick had to leave the room. I had to just be there. I don't remember anything. They put me to sleep, and
Mm.
yeah, we didn't get to experience much. Um, and that's what was traumatizing, was
Mm.
they kind of just forced everything, and it was just the most traumatizing thing. I think the
Mm,
next morning when Nick and I saw each other, oh, actually, not the next morning, that night, we just cried.
mm,
Like, we just cried the whole time. Like, he was saying sorry, I was saying sorry. It was just, pretty crazy. And I think till
mm,
now, this is the first time I haven't cried talking about it, because I
mm,
think it's just, I'm still trying to just heal through it.
mm,
And yeah, like I can't say I'm over it because
mm.
I'm not. And I think I don't want anyone to ever go through that. But yeah, that's how, and I think that explains how I am now postpartum, is that
Mm,
I am just trying to be, I'm trying to heal myself through training, through eating well, through, being positive, through, speaking life into my own son and making sure he is just the best little human,
mm.
So I think that's what, I'm kind of just trying to do in my own healing process.
Oh, thank you, sis. Thank you so much for sharing that. I feel like you will be helping so many mothers as well, because I have heard similar experiences where people have just felt like, oh, it's so traumatic. And nobody told me it was going to be like this, And I feel like not enough people kind of talk about it because it is traumatic. So for you to actually share that and to share your story was, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. I think I was ready to talk about it. I think before I
Yeah.
was like, nah, you
Yeah.
will never hear it come out of my mouth. But I think today
Mm.
it's like, well, I'm doing pretty good, It just shows
Yeah.
me I'm taking the right steps.
Yeah, amazing. One thing that really stood out to me as well was that you were cool, calm, and collected. You were kind of like the doctors are telling you these things, and you're like, nope, like I know what I want, and your partner's there to advocate for you as well. How freaking incredible that you have your partner there to be like, this is our plan, this is what we're doing, and for you to be strong in yourself to be like, no, like I know my body, I know what's going on. I'm good. And you kind of did that along your pregnancy. And look what freaking came of it. That's freaking incredible. When the doctors tell you, oh, you've got this high BMI and all these things. And you're like, nope, I know me. I'm good. I'm active. I'm all these things. So that's incredible in itself, but I think there's a point to be made here because a lot of the times when people go to doctors, they think they're the be all and end all, right? But there is kind of a point where they are people as well. They have their own kind of best interests at heart and stuff, and they don't know you like you know you. So there is a bit of, yeah, listen to the doctor because they have all this experience and they're educated on all this stuff, but also know yourself. So have you how did you become to be that way? Because I feel like it took me a very long time to realize this and be like, oh, trust myself. Have you always been like that, or have you gone through cases where it's kind of been like you've learned from something that's happened?
I think when started training, I started to really get to know my body. And I think with all the experience with training and eating, I kind of have learned a lot about my body, even like me being injured. Like, I know why I got injured.
Hmm.
A lot of people think like injuries kind of, you know, oh, some injuries are accidents, but I know my body so well to the point it's like, yeah, I know why I got injured. Right?
Mm,
So I think with all the experience I've had by training and eating, like I have learned a lot about how I am and how I function, you know?
mm,
So when I go to the doctors and they tell me about my BMI, I'm just like, I kind of just look at them like, well, run my blood tests. And, every
mm,
time they run my blood tests and they all come, back perfect, like it's just like, well, what are
mm,
you gonna say about my BMI? Like all you can say is my BMI is high, but you can't say that my sugar is high. You can't say my blood pressure is high because it clearly shows you that everything is fine. So once I kind of had that, and I think I was about 17 when I first started training, and I was
mm,
18 when I did my blood tests, and it showed them that my bloods were fine. So I think from that point I was like, wow, this whole time you guys made me feel like I was like the most unhealthiest person because of my
Mm,
BMI, you know?
mm,
But once you kind of like, you kind of do that and then you can see that, like, see it in front of you, it's like, okay, you're doing something right. You know, BMIs is just, they're just calculating your height and your weight. You know,
mm,
your weight doesn't tell you anything. The number on
mm,
the scale doesn't tell you anything. The number on the scale doesn't tell you, you know, you're going for like 10K walks.
mm,
So it's just like you can't measure your progress by a number.
mm.
Look at what you're doing every day. So I think once I kind of learned that from how a doctor would, perceive me, I was like, oh, I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my gosh, are you serious?
Yeah.
So even with when they would say like I would most likely blood clot because of my BMI, but they don't know that I'm very active to the point where my blood circulation is good. So it was just like, you only say that because of my BMI, but you don't know
Mm,
that I'm walking all the time. I'm always on my feet. So it's just like, honestly, I think it's just kind of like textbook, textbook, textbook.
yeah.
Even with the whole COVID stuff, it's just like,
Yeah.
they have to tell you because it's their job.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
if you go to a doctor that trains themselves and, they do, kind of similar things that you do, then no, they would say something totally different. So yeah, it just really depends, honestly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you speak about, you know yourself, you know you're active, you know the way you eat, you've learned about your own body, because that's incredible. How many people do that? Not many, know their body inside out and stuff like that. But then coming to them saying BMI, I guess, plus size people or people who are bigger in general kind of get looked at as you're unhealthy automatically just by the way you look, you're like unhealthy, lazy, doesn't work out, doesn't care about themselves, has a low self-esteem, isn't confident, all these things, right? It's just kind of placed on us. Um, so I think you're kind of a testament to it doesn't equal those things. We see a very active, strong woman that's doing all these, amazing things. What is your kind of thoughts around that?
um, yeah, like, it's just crazy how, like, people perceive big people as, like, as lazy and, but it's like, even when you see a big person in the gym recording themselves, I can see how this is, like, such a big thing for a lot of people. Like, especially confident big women, like, and
Mm,
they post themselves. Like, what is the problem? Like, I don't see a problem with that. Like, especially when, um we identify ourselves as like a big person. Like for me, I don't see myself as like a big person. I'm just a normal woman. Like I'm just a strong woman. That's
yeah.
all I am. Like you know it's just bizarre to me that people are just like, oh, like they have their own opinions on like big people who go and work out. It's like they're at the gym. Like,
Mm,
what else do you want us to do? Like,
mm,
it's kind of crazy that, you know, big people can't do certain things that, like your typical fit person would look like. Why
mm,
can't like we do that? What is it a problem for some? Like it's a problem.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
I don't see the issue. It's like we're all human. We're all trying to be better. We're all trying to do better. Big, small, tall, short. We're all on this journey of trying to
Mm,
be better. So
mm,
it's just it's pretty disturbing for me to be like it's always around big people.
mm,
Like big women. Like it's like what's the problem? Like, there's no problem. We're
mm,
human. We're women. We're like, why can't we just, you know, be who we are without,
yeah.
like, being looked at? It's like such a big thing, like being at the gym and then you see like a big woman and everyone's just like, doing that. And it's like, she's bettering herself. She's at the gym. Go girl.
Yeah.
And I always tell women like the number one question women ask me all the time is, you know, like how do you kind of get over that fear of like just going to the gym? And I think it's a big problem for a lot of women. And I just tell my advice I always say is you are your own critic, honestly. Ain't nobody looking at you but your damn self. Like,
Yes.
you are your own worst critic. So don't do that to yourself because
Mm,
the only person looking at you and the only person that's like literally like just staring at you is you. So,
mm,
don't do that. Don't do that to yourself. Like, be proud that you're there and you can kind of just be there. Like the hardest thing about the gym is just showing up.
mm.
It's just showing up. Just show up for yourself. That's all.
I finally got to see you in person at the International Women's Day, which was freaking incredible because I've always feel like I know people because we talk a lot online. You know,
Yeah.
and I'm like, I know her, but I haven't actually seen her in person. So it was cool to just be in your energy and to hug you in real life. And we had some really, really good conversations. And it was kind of like fast because we had
Yeah.
other places to be and stuff like that. That's why I was like, I need you on the podcast to talk about this. But one thing we really talked about was breaking generational cycles and the relationships that we have with our family. And sometimes in our families, there are toxic people or people you don't necessarily want to be around. But we're told as Polynesians, as islanders, that family's everything. You're brought up and you're very close with one another. So when you get to a certain age and you kind of look around and you're like, oh, I don't think these people are good for me, or I might need to distance myself and things like that. It is hard. And I shared with you how I don't have a relationship with my parents. And we had a really, really good conversation about it. So I don't know how much of it you'd love to share, but maybe if you want to share a little bit about that and breaking those generational cycles.
Yeah, I think it all begins with communicating. And I think growing up as an islander, I feel like I'm in like kind of the last generation where I have like very old school parents. I meet other islanders like me that are my age and their parents are like the modern day parents. So, my parents are not the modern day parents. They're still the
Mm.
old school living in like, the bloody 80s. So, with that being said, it's been very, very hard growing up around my parents. Um, with my mom, it was very hard in the beginning because when you have old school parents, it's like they don't see anything else. It's like they still live with by their traditional ways, their cultural ways, and our culture is it'll never die. Our culture just keeps living on being a Samoan. So with my mom, it was really, really hard. Like
Mm,
I just remember like I said, everything started for me when I was 13. So I think at
mm,
that moment I kind of knew what what I was around, especially with my parents. You
mm,
know, with my mom, yeah. Look, I was a very depressed when I was younger, and
mm,
it's like your parents kind of don't want to know that. But with my mom, I let her know. As uncomfortable as it was for her to just
mm,
sit in the car and me just speak about it and tell her like, "Look, I feel like you guys don't love me." You
mm,
don't ever want to hear your kid saying that. And I think for my mom, it was just like she honestly, I think there was like a time when she absolutely hated being in the car with me when it would only be her and me. Oh, I'm gonna make her uncomfortable. Like I would just be like, oh, I'm just always sad all the time. Like, even dad, I feel like he doesn't love me. And, you guys just favor her more than me and da 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 and it just took that for my mom and I to have an amazing relationship today. Like
mm,
I had to keep putting her through like uncomfortable conversations for her to understand how how I am today.
Mm.
And she knows how I am today. Like, it's probably the funniest thing because she's just like, oh, here we go again. Like, I'm the one like trying to call up all these meetings, all these family meetings, and I'm like the youngest in the family. And she's like, it like gives her anxiety. It gives her anxiety that I'm just like, sending a message to everyone like, all right, family meeting at mom and dad's this week, da da da. And I know how she's feeling because she's just like, oh, okay, like it's gonna be another uncomfortable thing. But I
Mm.
think that's how it begins. And I
Mhm.
think that's how it should start, where you have to have very, very uncomfortable things with your families. And I think my dad is still a work in progress. I think with men, it's a whole different ball game when it comes to men. Oh my goodness. Like,
Mhm.
I'm 25 now and I'm still trying to work on my dad, you know,
Mhm.
like I can't lie. I think I'm getting at a point where I'm just like, oh, all right, I'm about to give up. Like,
Mm.
I'm too old for this shit. I got a kid. If you're not gonna meet me halfway, then
Yeah.
but that's what I mean. It's all the things where it makes them uncomfortable, you know?
Mm. Mm.
So, yeah, that's how I would kinda talk about generational, um yeah, like it's something hard, and I think
Yeah.
that's where confidence comes in. Everyone thinks that me being confident, it's because I just am. But no, I'm confident because I know how to call up on that shit.
Yeah.
I'm like, it's scary. Like, people, like, it wasn't easy for me to bring up those conversations with my mum. Like, it was hard
Mm.
as hell. Like I would be crying in the car telling her how depressed she makes me feel.
Mm.
Like,
Yeah.
it's not an easy conversation, but because I just do it, like, later it's like, wow, I'm so happy that I was able to kind of do that. And that's what makes me confident because
Mm.
uh, I stand on it. Like, I can do the uncomfortable things. I can bring up what made me upset in the past,
Mm. Yeah.
and bring it up. So, yeah.
Love that. Communication truly is key.
Communication with everyone, your family, your
Yeah.
partners, your kids. So
Yes,
it's a big
absolutely.
thing, and it's a never-ending thing. Like, especially confrontation. No one likes confrontation. Oh my
Mm.
gosh. But it's necessary. You have to
Yeah.
do it. You have to kind of get through the bump to kind of, have a smooth surface.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you bring up, in every relationship, with your partner, with your kids. Milana's going to be so lucky growing up, having those conversations because, yeah, it's not taking on those or breaking the generational cycles. I do want to wrap because I've taken so much of your time, but I have a few more questions if you don't mind. You speak about Nick, he sounds freaking incredible, him advocating for you and in when you're giving birth, everything I see online, you talk about communication, which I think is very important in a relationship. What would your I guess what would you say is key to having a good relationship with your partner?
Oh, yeah, literally, like, talking about the things you don't want to talk about, especially like your upbringings and, pulling them up on what they do and you don't like.
Mm,
Like, I think that was the worst. Like, it's funny because everyone thinks your honeymoon phase in the beginning. Our beginning was the worst part of our relationship because I
mm,
was constantly just, trying to communicate everything. And I think we have very different upbringings. I think Nick's upbringing, he wasn't good at communication. He was good at escaping, you know?
mm,
So it was like, mm-mm, no, you're not going to escape this, boo. You sit right here. We're going to
mm,
talk. This is hard, but we're going to have to do it. And it's the hardest thing, honestly. It is
mm,
so hard. People underestimate communication with your partners, you know,
mm,
the whole silent treatment, all of that. Hell no. No, no,
mhm,
no, no. You need to talk it out because the minute you guys don't talk and the silent treatment begins, like, it's hard to come back from that. And then it'll just become a thing that you guys do. And
mhm,
one thing that I remember before coming into a relationship, I always knew that communication was going to be a big thing for me. And I think that's why it took me a long time to settle, because it was like, oh, it's like no one wants to communicate these days. So, when I met Nick, it wasn't like we kind of just fell in love. It wasn't like, okay, we're going to start dating. No, we just fell
Mm,
in love. So when we kind of fell in love, it was like, okay, let's slowly, let's talk.
mhm.
But then obviously once we got into a relationship, it was like, all right, damn. So what's your trauma been like?
Yeah.
Like, but that's stuff that we don't want to talk about,
Mhm.
especially for men. I don't think women understand that us and men, we are completely programmed differently. How we think is not how they think. They like women are like, oh, but he's supposed to. No, he doesn't know. He doesn't know. If you think he knows, he doesn't. He has no clue. That's why communication is it's too important. Like you have to say it because they're gonna be like, well, I didn't know. Like, and they genuinely don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, damn.
Yeah. Ah, korero, sis. Everything you said, I was like, yep, yep, the silent treatment. Please don't do that. We're in 2024. That's not a thing anymore. Like we're not doing that kind of stuff. So yeah, communication, all the things. Also, the freaking proposal, how he proposed to you was fucking
Oh
dreamy.
my god.
Yeah, I was like, he did that. He did all of that. Like
I
that's
know.
freaking
I was like, "You
and
didn't, like, ask my sister to help you?" Like, anyway, he's like, "Nah," and I'm like, "Damn,
yeah.
wow."
Uh It
Yeah.
was it looked freaking incredible. I actually watched it again before
Yeah.
our interview because I was like, yeah, that's right. I'm gonna have her on the podcast. I'm gonna go watch some things, and I watched it again and I cried and I was like, fuck, like that's incredible. So it's beautiful to see that you're in such a beautiful relationship. There was one more question I wanted to ask you because at the International Women's Day, we also had a talk about kind of what you were there for in the first place in the business. I'm not sure if you want to talk much about it, but I thought I would make space before it because if you do want to talk about it, let's talk about it. So, firstly, do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, awesome. So, talk about what you were there for and then kind of what your aha moment was being there. And then we can go from there.
Yeah, so I was basically there, because I was invited to so before the event, I was invited to be a guest speaker, to talk about confidence.
Mhm.
And I pretty much did that. And in return, they were like, oh, would you want to just come to our event? To kind of just, sit in and I remember it was Amma Vena. I
Mhm.
remember who was it? It was Amma, yes. She was talking to me about doing keynote speaking because
Mhm.
my plan was to do like a fitness app with Nick, but for some reason that keynote speaking just stuck with me so much more, even though I've
Mhm.
been like thinking about this fitness app for so long.
Mm.
But just the fact of keynote speaking and women and empowerment, like that, nothing makes me more like excited than that,
Mhm.
like fitness and stuff. Obviously, it's always been there for me, but you know, like thinking of women and empowerment, that's what like makes me like excited,
Mhm.
excites me way more than this fitness app.
Mhm.
So I remember I just kind of thought about it and it was just always in the back of my head. So I attended the event to kind of just, just find some inspiration because I think in the back of my head it was kind of like I don't think it's possible,
Mm.
it's a bit impossible for me. But just sitting there like listening to the guest speakers, it was like, damn, no, I think I can do this. It was like,
Mhm.
no, I think I can do it. And just listening to their journeys and also like them being mums, like for me, what really made me like, okay, like it was the fact when she was saying it's already chaotic being a mum and doing all of this. Why make your life simple by just kind of being just that?
Mm,
So it was just like, you know what? You're right, sis.
yeah.
So yeah, that's basically how I kind of like, you know what? I think I, not I think, I definitely want to do something around there.
Yes. Absolutely. And when you shared that with me as well, I was like, that makes so much sense. Like it makes sense. Looking at you, you are, you're confident. Your energy is amazing. You've got an amazing story of who you are and why you can, all the things you've overcome and being confident because a lot of women lack confidence. And a lot of, the work I do as well is building that confidence up. I used to be the same. I was not confident and it was, realizing what I need to do. And once I became confident, people become attracted to you. And then it's like, hey, babe, this is what you need to do. This is how I can help you. We need more confident women in the world. So,
Yeah.
I'm really excited for your journey, for your keynote speaking journey. And the reason why I wanted you to talk about it on the podcast is because if anyone is listening and they have spaces where, they need speakers, they need women like Lilz, please reach out to Lilz. What's your Instagram? Are you on Facebook or TikTok or anything like that? Where can people find you?
Funny, I have to go on TikTok. Everyone's always like, "You need to go on TikTok," and I'm like,
Yes.
"I know, I feel like I don't even know how to use TikTok." I know, I can't believe I don't know how to use TikTok. Anyway, I'm gonna get on
Yeah.
TikTok, but just Instagram for now, Crossthick. But I'm so sorry, but something you just said before, it kind of just stuck with me. You were talking about like you about not realizing how much women actually lack confidence. Like I think that
Mm,
was a big one for me. And I think that's why I'm so kind of I'm so inspired and so motivated to really get into this because it's like I didn't realize it was such a big thing. Like I
mhm,
didn't realize how it's a big thing to like lack that, especially like owning a business and especially owning a business. Like women who own the business, they don't want to like show you it's them behind it
mm,
because of the lack of confidence.
mhm,
So it's really bizarre to me that it's like, oh my gosh, you own a business and you don't want to showcase yourself. Like, are you
mhm.
crazy?
Yep.
So yeah, that's so yeah, thank you for saying
Yeah.
that.
So yeah, we definitely need you in this space. We need you doing all your speaking gigs and everything. And I'm so excited to watch you blossom in this space. And I'm definitely, if I ever have anybody or any gigs, I'm like, Lils, we need to hear her story. We need to hear more of her. And that was one of the reasons I wanted you on this podcast as well, because you have an incredible story. You have an incredible mind. You have incredible energy. The things that you say, it really shows. It comes from a place of healing, and that you've actually gone through it. Because unfortunately, sometimes in these spaces there are people that talk about it, but they're not about it. They don't be about it. They don't walk the talk. But you truly are somebody who is walking the talk, and we need more people like you. So I'm really excited to see you doing your thing, sis, doing your keynote speaking. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast, for making time for me, for making time for the people, and to get, the messages that you share out there, because so many things that we've talked about, from your traumatic birth story to confidence, is so, so important. These conversations are very important to be had. So thank you. I know you're going to help so many women. So thank you so much for being on the podcast, sis.
Thank you so much for having me and anytime. Thank you for approaching me at the event because it was like, oh my gosh, yes. So thank
Yes.
you. Thank you.